the team. Daniel came to see me this morning and asked if we would release him. We mutually agreed that would be best for him and for the team. Daniel has been a great representative of our organization, first class in every way. His handling of this situation yesterday exemplifies just that. We're all disappointed in how things have worked out. We hold Daniel in high regard and have great appreciation for him. We wish him nothing but the best in the future. Glad you're with us here on this NFL Live Friday. We've got Dan Orlovsky, we have Ryan Clark, we have Marcus Spears, Mina Kimes working through some technical difficulties, and she will be joining us soon. So I'll start with you, Dan. Busy week of news out of New York. What do you make of this latest development with Daniel Jones?
Yeah, necessary and needed ever since the benching became official. I guess the most surprising part of this is, at least by reports, that the Giants were surprised post-benching that Daniel Jones would request this. I think this was probably something that most people should have anticipated, that he would want to move on. I fully expect Daniel Jones to clear waivers. And then the question becomes, what's his move? Does he go to a team and try to get a bunch of snaps for the rest of the 6 or 7 weeks left of the season? Or does he go and see if he can join a contending football team? The Dolphins come to mind for me. I wouldn't disagree or hate the fact of the Chicago Bears trying to get a veteran there for Caleb Williams. The Los Angeles Chargers, now that they're going on a playoff run, having someone behind Justin Herbert. I think it's going to take both parties doing due diligence. What does Daniel Jones want and expect? And then what teams think that they have a legitimate chance to make a run and just want to upgrade at the backup quarterback spot?
Yeah, I think this is sort of confusing for me. I feel like the New York Giants, though they mishandled this situation, which is what got them to this point with Daniel Jones, have done their best to be a class act in how they have handled him as far as extending him and giving him a contract and allowing him to play as long as possible to prove that he earned and deserved that contract. I watched the same thing or something similar happen with Russell Wilson last year. I felt like Russell Wilson, at least publicly, was treated much more harshly than Daniel Jones has been treated. So Daniel Jones going to the Mara family and asking for his release is somewhat puzzling to me. It does give me a little look into why he sort of gave a farewell to the fans, a farewell to the organization yesterday. I think if you're Daniel Jones now, you want to move forward and have an opportunity to compete somewhere. You want to show that you could be a good starting quarterback in this league. I don't know if that market exists for him right now, but what we do know, there's been the Carson Wentz's, the Gardner Minshew's, and some of these starting quarterbacks that have gotten opportunities in other places to be starters again or to at least compete for those jobs. And I believe that's what Daniel Jones is going to do. I don't know if you're a team that's saddled right now with Desmond Ridder and Gardner Minshew. Do you say to yourself, maybe bringing Daniel Jones in as a backup is a smart move for us if we're the Las Vegas Raiders for the rest of the year?
I like the ideas that both of y'all talked about, and Daniel Jones obviously requesting a release I thought was the right thing to do to get this next phase of his career started. And I don't know the backup situation, but Dan, I heard you throw some teams out there. If I'm Daniel Jones, I'm trying to get around Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan or Ben Johnson. I'm trying to get around some guys that we've seen develop quarterbacks and put them in really good situations just to sit and learn. I know a backup is very valuable in this league, but I think about Baker Mayfield leaving and going to the Rams. I'm sure he talks about what he learned from Sean McVay. You think about Kyle Shanahan, where he brought in Sam Darnold, and at a time we was talking about Sam Darnold can truly compete against Brock Purdy. We wouldn't feel bad about him going back in the game, but I think this is a learning tenure for Daniel Jones to be in a better situation, because the reality is he didn't play great. And we knew that this was coming, but he also wasn't set up well. Offensive line issues, never having a dominant wide receiver. Obviously, was a lot of things going on in New York outside of Daniel Jones and what his talent was or wasn't. But I think this needs to be a learning process for him. So I would get around some of these offensive minds that we think very highly of, especially from the quarterback position, and try to learn as much as possible. And maybe that ignites something in him and he can play better football going forward if that opportunity ever presents itself. And I think that should be his train of thought right now, is just soaking up as much information and learning how to play the position. And this is no shade to Brian Daboll. I think he's one of the better quarterback guys in the league, but we've seen system and structure that he implemented with Josh Allen that made him better. And obviously there were some highlights of Daniel Jones last year as the reason why they decided to pay him. But I think now he needs to get around a great quarterback developer and some offensive football minds to get a different perspective of what this league is from that position.
Yeah, if he's ever going to have a career in this league again as a starter, he needs to decompress. The goal should not be to run somewhere where you can get snaps on a bad football team right now. The goal should be, how do you remake your name?
Right.
And Marcus, I actually like the point of Detroit for a couple of reasons. I didn't think about this, but one, obviously you have the chance to be around a really well-run organization. You learn offensive football at an incredibly high level, and one that he's not been around. But also this. Ben Johnson, who's their play caller, is probably going to go be a head coach next year. You have no idea what that 7-week stretch could lead to when it comes to the 2025 season.
Yeah.
So if you get around an offensive coordinator that becomes a head coach somewhere and he wants to bring in somebody that knows his system, that he believes maybe has a chance to be an impactful player for their organization, that's a good spot. So I actually think that Detroit spot, the more I think about it after you said it, makes a lot of sense. But most importantly, Daniel, don't chase what you want right now for what you really want. What you really want is to rebuild your career. The understanding and the learning experience is way more important than snaps.
Yeah, it's a good point, you guys, and well illustrated. Marcus, to your point about Baker Mayfield, it's worth remembering that time with Sean McVay also connected him with Liam Cohen. That's the offensive coordinator, of course, now with the Bucs. They developed a great relationship, and then that was a really smart marriage there in Tampa Bay. We'll see what happens with Daniel Jones, but along the lines of what's going on there
is that
in
leather?
New York, new on NFL Live from it is leather because it's Friday, okay? Thank you. It might be pleather to be honest, but Adam Schefter says this, Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors is not practicing today due to a groin injury. He's being listed as questionable for Sunday. However, he told our Giants reporter Jordan Renaud that he intends to play on Sunday, so we'll keep an eye on that as Tommy DeVito taking over as the quarterback there. All right, how about the action on Thursday night that got everything started? Bears reporter Courtney Cronin, Keenan Allen rolled his ankle at practice and was pulled midway through. Per Matt Eberflus, the Bears are, quote, hopeful for Allen to be able to play against Minnesota. That's something to keep an eye on. And two struggling offenses in the Vikings and Bears facing off on Sunday. Over the last 4 weeks, the Vikings rank bottom 10 in points per game after ranking 6th in that category through 7 weeks. Despite that, they've gone 3-1 in that span. Their defense allowing under 16 points per game, carrying them. On the other side, the Bears rank last in points per game and yards per play since week 8. They have the third worst red zone efficiency. They did, of course, the Bears make the offensive coordinator change. Looked a little bit better last week despite not getting the win. But Dan, both offenses seem to be down right now. What is the reason for Minnesota specifically slowing down on offense?
October 24th. And that's the day that Christian Darrisaw, their essentially all-pro left tackle, got hurt. And they've tried to replace him. Cam Robinson traded for. It's just not the same offense. Trent Williams is the best left tackle in football. There's no question about it. And I think his impact on San Francisco's offense is probably the most important one. So is Christian Darrisaw's. Just look at the difference since he got it. We're talking about almost a touchdown less. Sam Darnold is significantly less quarterback. He's thrown way less touchdowns when it comes to his performance since he's got hurt since before, and they're half a yard play less. They are significantly worse running the football. They used to be able to run the football to the left side of their offensive line whenever they wanted to. Sam has to leave the pocket much quicker than he used to with that security on that left side. This is why I have a little hesitation with Minnesota more than I did at the beginning of the season. I thought Minnesota was a stone-cold lock for legit contender against Detroit. That Darrisaw injury and the way this offense looks without him, it gives me hesitation.
I completely agree. I think also it brings out the worst of Sam Darnold, who Dan and I are both a big fan of his talent. But, you know, we have seen pressure affect him over the course of his career. He does have a pretty high pressure to sack rate, and he does tend to throw more turnover-worthy passes when he is under pressure. And that has been the case certainly more often than it was before Darrisaw got injured. I think along those lines, on the flip side, for Chicago to have a chance in this thing, they have to get far more pressure than they've gotten over the last few weeks. I mean, this was a defense that through the first 6 weeks of the season was second in pass rush win. They were getting pressure not just from Montez Sweat, who's their star edge rusher, but also those defensive tackles and players like Darrell Taylor. Since then, it's fallen off of a cliff. They've gone from second to 30th. And Montez Sweat missed a couple of those games, but he is back from injury. I bring this up to say, you know, this is a big part of why the defense has struggled in recent weeks, and it's going to be so important in this game because of what we discussed with Sam Darnold.
Marcus, on the other side of this thing with Caleb Williams, he did, like I mentioned, look better with Thomas Brown as the offensive coordinator, but now you got to go up against this Vikings defense. What do you expect out of him this week?
First of all, you got to try to calm the noise and don't let the picture blow your mind away before the ball is even snapped. And last week we talked about it against Green Bay of how he played faster. I think there needs to be a healthy dose of trying to get the ball in Moore's hand, trying to find some screen opportunities when you are facing this rush with DeAndre Swift, but playing quick and seeing it and letting it go. I think about that when Dan said that a couple weeks ago. See it, rip it, right? And obviously we know that Brian Flores is going to throw some exotic looks at him and do all of those things. But the faster he can process, the faster he can be confident in where the ball is going pre-snap, I think is going to help him tremendously. And last but not least, use your athleticism. Sometimes it's not there downfield. Use his legs. We saw him do it against Green Bay as well. I would implement some of the same things that we saw last week. Now, it'll be different because you'll probably be pressured more, but Caleb Williams needs to stay in a similar vein of what he did against the Green Bay Packers.
Hey, man, my grandma used to tell me, if they want you to go somewhere and you got to think twice, that place ain't for you. So I'm giving that same sort of advice to Caleb Williams.
Upscale.
If you look at it and you got to think twice, it ain't for you. And we saw that last week against the Green Bay Packers. He wasn't necessarily trying to read what the Packers were doing in each and every window. He picked his window. He knew where the ball should go. And when it wasn't supposed to go there, he used his legs. And like everyone has said about Caleb Williams this entire week, he seemed decisive. And I think Thomas Brown needs to preach that to him again. Marcus mentioned getting it out of his hands extremely quickly and putting it in the hands of his playmakers. But I thought Caleb did a good job himself in decision-making. And they need to do the same thing this week because the picture will change for the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, well, RC, you're going somewhere the rest of us aren't. So apparently it is for you because you're the only one picking the Bears here. Just tell us quickly why.
I don't really know why. You know what?
No, we don't sound the gong.
Too.
Don't sound the gong.
I don't know why.
Don't sound the gong. Don't sound the gong.
Yeah.
I'm going with the
Go ahead, RC.
I do believe what I've seen from Minnesota's offense recently gives me a little bit of optimism that they can make some plays, that being the Chicago Bears on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Caleb Williams making quick decisions and them going to more of an understanding of let's put the football in our playmakers' hands and not allow things to process down the field is a way to make sure that you don't make those mistakes that the Minnesota Vikings thrive off of. And I wanted to have a little fun.
All right, we had a
Also, guys, by the way,
and
I can see all of you right now. It is so creepy. I'm so used to just looking at myself in the screen.
I thought
this is weird.
Hey, everybody wave at RC.
Creepy.
Everybody wave at RC.
Hey, RC.
Look at
Everybody
you guys.
Glad you can see us. We had a false gong. We'll see how we do for the rest of the show. Browns' big win. Let's go to playing in the NFC West. Well, it had been Kyler Murray's kryptonite prior to this season. In 2022 and 2023, he went 0-6 against division opponents while posting a total QBR of 36, the third worst among qualified QBs. This season, however, he's gone 2-0 while ranking top 3 in total QBR and yards per attempt in division games. He looks to snap a 5-game losing streak versus the Seahawks on Sunday. Dan, Seattle's defense pulled off the win against the 49ers. Are they up against it in a bigger challenge against the Cardinals this week?
Yeah, I believe they are. This Cardinals offense is more dangerous right now than the 49ers. First of all, I think they got the guys playing the best football in the NFL at tight end and Trey McBride. And there's a lot of great tight ends in the league. This guy's a problem right now. I mean, his ability, yards after the catch, matchup problem, the physical presence, he reminds me of a young Jason Witten. I think the second thing is Kyler outside the pocket when it comes to the designed rollouts. They do such a good job in Arizona of creating and crafting run game looks that get Kyler on the edge. And the third thing is I think that, like, the understanding of how they call and deploy their screen game's a big deal. Challenge number one, who's handling McBride? I really believe that. I think Kyler outside the pocket's a big deal again. And then their screen game, I know Marcus mentioned this as well yesterday. There's some teams who are really good at like one kind of screen. Arizona's good at multiple kinds of screens. And I think that's the massive challenge presented to Seattle.
Yeah, I think they're good at multiple kinds of screens because they have different players that are great with the football in their hands. But to me, it all starts in the run game with James Conner. The looks that they give you where you can't truly dial in on the type of run that you're going to receive. And then also the physicality from James Conner when he gets into the second level. And I also love that this offense can be explosive off of many of those looks with Marvin Harrison Jr. and also Trey McBride. And so they will present so many different problems to the Seattle Seahawks that I believe the San Francisco 49ers couldn't last week. I believe the way they match up, but also having a quarterback in Kyler Murray, who at least quietly to me is playing at an MVP level.
Yeah.
So the Seahawks defense has played better over the last 2 weeks, and some of that is because they've completely changed over their linebacker group, traded for Ernest Jones. He's played really good football for this team. However, this offense challenges the linebacker position in particular in a way that's honestly matched by very few teams in the NFL. It's how we thought about the Niners before, frankly, because as you guys have laid out, if you are focused on stopping this downhill running game with James Conner, they'll either punish you with Kyler Murray keeping the ball and getting outside, or they'll play action you. They run play action at the sixth highest rate, in the NFL. The Seahawks defense has been the worst in the league against play action. Now, a lot of that has come from games before they made the change at linebacker. Yeah. So my feeling is this game will test that change at the linebacker position in a way that's going to be very revealing of where the Seahawks defense is headed.
Yeah, look, all of y'all make great points, but the thing that scares me the most, and I know we talk about it a lot, is Kyler in the unscripted situations as well. Like being able to compensate for when a play breaks down. He's playing great in structure right now, which I think is something that has obviously Dan excited talking about how he's playing. But more importantly, when you a defense and you coming into the game, when it's already a good run game, like RC mentioned, but you also add that element of QB run, and not all the time now with Kyler is taking off. It's actually punishing you, to y'all's point, on the outside when he's getting outside of the pocket as well. I think right now this offense probably challenges all 53 and a third. That's the width of a football field for the people that's watching. And that becomes an issue for a lot of people when the quarterback is so good in space, and not only being good in space, the ability to hit the home run when he gets into the second level as well.
The old 53 and a third. All right, let's do our game picks here.
Baby. You gotta
Across
cover
the
every
board,
blade of grass.
we're going Cardinals, except Swagoo.
No,
You're
not.
going Seattle.
No
Why?
gong. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Come
I'm
on
going
now,
Seattle.
Marcus.
I'm
going Seattle.
The reverse and like banking on the Cardinals, but truly rooting for the
My
Seahawks.
bad, MK. My bad.
She was saying
My
that.
bad.
No, it's okay.
It's okay, though. Maybe just going to be right
this
for
could
me.
be some Kenneth Walker game.
There we go.
I think the run game could
Hey,
be
new
good
on
for
NFL
Seattle
Live
this week.
and in San Francisco, Brock Purdy is not on the field, you guys, in uniform during the early open portion of practice today. This according to ESPN's Nick Wagner. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, defensive end Nick Bosa has missed practice this week with an oblique injury suffered in last week's loss to the Seahawks. Something to keep an eye on as we turn our attention to this 49ers-Packers matchup this week. Some key injuries there for the 49ers, which has been kind of like their theme of the season. Second half performance has been a key part of the 49ers and Packers records this season. San Francisco ranks bottom 10 in point differential and turnover margin in the second half, while having the fourth fewest expected points added on defense. On the other side, Green Bay has put up the fifth best points differential and second best turnover margin. Halftime adjustments big in that. Mina, if Nick Bosa isn't able to go this weekend, how do you see Green Bay attacking that defense?
Yeah, judging by how that defense looked without Nick Bosa last week, I think they'll have a lot of success. One area that I think that is a pretty big mismatch is this Packers rushing attack, which is really good against the Niners' run defense. That split flow run game, if Bosa's, even if he's hurt and playing, is going to present massive problems for them with Tucker Kraft coming across the formation. You saw wide open lanes against Chicago last week. The other thing, guys, I would look out for is this. San Francisco cannot defend the QB run. They're dead last in the NFL EPA per play versus QB scrambles. I noted that last week and I thought, well, it's Geno Smith, probably not going to be a factor. Then all he does is go for huge 2 scrambles to close out the game. If I'm Green Bay, I contemplate using Malik Willis in the red zone in this one because I think that's a weakness of San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, just structure-wise, they play so much quarters, match coverage. So if you have people breaking out, that's kind of the Geno back-to-back runs. The vacancy in the middle of the field is there. There's one specific area where Matt LaFleur has very much so deviated from Kyle Shanahan's traditional offenses. I don't think there's a quarterback who throws the ball outside more than Jordan Love. The ball is going to the perimeter on a consistent basis in their pass game. And if you're the 49ers, you can't give up so much free access. And that's something that Geno had success. So they're going to have to do a really good job of, I think, clamping down on the perimeter just a little bit more to force the holding of the football and making sure that those safeties are protecting the middle of the field, because that's somewhere where eventually if you take away some of those outside throws for Jordan Love in that quarters coverage, meaning everybody's got a quarter of the field zone-wise, they'll take their shots at the safeties. Jordan Love throws it fantastically. Matt LaFleur calls it a ton. It's the weakness coverage-wise for San Francisco when it comes to their structure. I think if they want to hang in this game, they got to clamp down a little bit more when it comes to the space that they give on the perimeter.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that changes. Obviously, Deommodore Lenoir has moved into that number one spot, especially with Travarius Ward out, but I believe that converts some of those routes into chunk plays, which we know the Green Bay Packers aren't scared to take shots. But I remember a while back, Alabama won a national championship, and when they asked one of the players how they won it, he said, "'Cause we just out-physical them." I think that's what the Green Bay Packers have to come in and do. They need to come into this game and in the run game out-physical the San Francisco 49ers. There might not be Nick Bosa on the field, but Josh Jacobs and what the Green Bay Packers have been able to do running the football, I believe, is something we don't speak about enough. It's not only a physical run game, but it's a run game that can also get chunk yardage. And now you get Jordan Love into play action pass off of that. I believe that gives them an opportunity to get those big plays over the top to guys like Christian Watson and Jaden Reed.
Marcus, on the other side of the ball, who are you looking to have a breakout game on Sunday?
Y'all, Deebo Samuel needs to become the focal point of this offense.
Yeah.
And I know we talk about Christian McCaffrey getting him back and George Kittle potentially returning, but it's almost like we done forgot that I thought this – I firmly believe, even with the addition that they made of Christian McCaffrey, this still was the major problem for teams. And it was Deebo Samuel obviously run after the catch, finding ways to get him the football and just being dynamic. And I feel like this offense has gotten away from him a little bit. Obviously, I talked earlier this week about not having Brandon Ayuk with separation, but when it came to this prolific offense that we've seen for a large majority of the time, it was just about getting Deebo the ball in his hands and letting him create after that. I love to see a lot more of that from Kyle Shanahan.
A reminder, too, as we told you, Brock Purdy was not out at practice today, so we'll keep an eye on that. Also, the 49ers currently underdogs at ESPN Bet. They've been the favorite in 36 consecutive games, the third longest streak in the Super Bowl era. And I guess we're paying attention to that because we're about to sound the gong. Everybody here is on the Packers. So, Packers across the board. We'll see if the 49ers can prove us wrong, as once again, they are the underdogs the first time in, like, forever. All right, what does this mean for fantasy players in the game? Uh-oh. Well, we'll talk about it later. Time now for AI-generated fantasy insights from IBM Watson X. This week, Christian McCaffrey projected to have a high of 25.6 fantasy points and a low of 12.3. His high leads all running backs this week by over 2.5 points and is second among all players, with Jaden Daniels versus the Cowboys beating him by less than 0.2 of a point. If you got Jaden Daniels, good for you. Coming up, Dan thinks Sunday's big game, something we guarantee, which is a lock, and then an X factor for the outcome, which is a key. Marcus, what's your lock in this matchup?
My lock is that Jared Goff will have a play action pass touchdown. Is water wet? There's been questions about it, but I don't know. But what is going to happen is there will be a time where Detroit is having a lot of success running the football, and eventually we know what's going to happen. This has become one of the most sure things in the NFL, that an explosive play will come off of play action for the Detroit Lions, and Jared Goff damn near going to have a perfect passer rating again when this game is over with.
Dan, what's the key in this game?
Yeah, I think the trio of wide receivers each have to make one of their kind of forte plays. Alec Pierce has got to hit a deep ball for a big play. A.D. Mitchell has got to hit a crosser for a big play. And then Josh Downs is going to have to win one-on-one for a big play on a seam ball type thing. That's the only way. They're going to get a ton of opportunity versus man coverage. If each one of those guys has one of those vintage plays, I think they got a chance to hang around.
Man, we all talked about Anthony Richardson playing a lot better last week, but we're all picking the Lions in this one. So sound the gong. Lions across
I
the
ain't
board.
even tripping. Yep, not tripping.
Good.
Hey,
you can put up anybody
it's
against
fine.
The Lions. I'm
Listen,
picking the Lions.
let's
I was
move
about to
right
say,
along,
you put
okay? Let's
all
go to
31
Vegas.
other ones.
Let's go to Vegas, where they're hosting the Broncos. Mina, what's your lock in this one?
Yeah, I think Bo Nix is going to continue the strong play that we have seen over the last few weeks when he is not pressured, because this Broncos offensive line is so underrated. And this Raiders team, the last time they played, only pressured Bo Nix on 2 dropbacks. He and Sean Payton have put together a really nice marriage, especially when he's kept clean, and this offensive line has done a terrific job of keeping him clean.
Yeah, and my key is this Denver Broncos front 7 defensively. I believe this is one of the more underrated groups in all of football. The way they can put pressure on you with 4, how they stop the run, and also what Vance Joseph does when he adds rushers from the second level. This is a defense that we saw against the Kansas City Chiefs, we saw last week as well, that makes it extremely difficult on quarterbacks, and that back-end coverage of Riley Moss and Pat Surtain on the outside is absolutely locked down.
All right, so speaking of that, we're all on the Broncos, so sound the gong once again. I feel good about this one too, though. So
Feel good again.
here we go. We're going to keep
I wonder
it.
what
We
Dan's
can't change
score
it
is.
anyway.
2017.
We're coming your way here on NFL Live, and when we come back, we're talking. Eagles wide receiver Devontae Smith has been ruled out against the Rams, according to our Adam Schefter. The wideout missed practice all week with a hamstring injury. I know, I said ooh too. That's interesting. We're going to pick this game, Rams-Eagles, in just a little bit. But Marcus, can the Rams slow down this Eagles offense, now knowing, of course, they will be without Devontae Smith?
Damn, this leads into the way for the Rams. Look, y'all know how I feel about this defensive line of Verse, Fisk, Turner, and Young incorporated, but I think you have to create some negative plays up front with your 4-man rush. We know that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to try to hit some explosives, and most likely will, between Saquon and obviously having A.J. Brown. This Devontae Smith missing is a big issue, and news that we got just now. But I think if it's going to be any impact on this offense from Philly that we've seen do so well here recently, and also Jalen taking care of the football, if anything is going to impact that, it'll be this young defensive line creating some negative plays and some pressure.
I think they've got to handle the athleticism of Philadelphia's offensive line. I think that's the thing that separates this offensive line away from others. Just watch how well they move. Lane Johnson pulling and trapping that defensive tackle. I don't know how many tackles in the NFL are capable of doing that. What that allows is everybody gets to the second level so easily. Watch how these guys can pull left tackle, right guard, and tight end. I mean, this is a triple trap essentially, and you get so many people up on their guys, so much displacement when it comes to the seams of their run game. And then the game winner from last week with the toss, just look at the backside guard, look at the center, climb all the way up and dump truck that backside defensive linebacker. The seam that is there for Saquon Barkley and his vision attached. Marcus, I agree. I feel the same way about this Rams defensive line. They ain't seen an offensive line like this that they're going to see in Philly since the week one that they saw in Detroit. Can they handle Philadelphia's athleticism when it comes to their upfront group?
Well, Philadelphia has to handle them in the run, in my opinion, so you can keep this team from pinning their ears back and rushing. When you watch this front of the Los Angeles Rams rush, they rush in cohesion, whether it's a TE stunt or both tackles stunting, and the way they also pressure the quarterback to where it almost seems like the pocket envelops them. I believe that's one of their strengths is that they play this like a basketball team. And so if you can run the football and now have them guessing about playing blocks or what kind of blocks or what sort of run, I believe this slows them down in the pass rush, which is huge now that you're missing Devontae Smith, who wins very often in one-on-one matchups.
There's so many good storylines in this game. Yesterday we talked about McVay versus Fangio. For me, this is the Defensive Rookie of the Year bowl. On one side, you've got Jared Verse. You guys talked about this Rams defensive line who leads all rookies in sacks. He's 5th league-wide in pressures. And on the other, you got Quinyon Mitchell, who, since the bye, has allowed 15 yards per game as the nearest defender. And what I love about this matchup, so to speak, is they are both going against the best of the best. Dan talked about it. Jared Verse is going to be tested in this one against those Eagles tackles in a way that he simply has not been. And on the flip side, Quinton Mitchell, you're going to have to defend two of the best wide receivers in the NFL, in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They're going to get both of them on you. It's Sean McVay, right? So I feel like we are going to come out of this with a better sense, perhaps, of where that race is going, because both of those two rookies who have been absolute studs this year are going against such difficult competition.
Dan, I love that you showed those traps, because this game is really going to be about controlled aggression from this young defensive line. And it's going to challenge their technique, but also it's going to challenge their patience. And that is something I'm interested to see in the maturity-wise, because they can pin their ears back, like RC mentioned, and get up the field. But sometimes Philly invites you up the field. Will they have a good enough feel for an offensive line to be able to play back into those blocks and be able to manage this run game with Saquon Barkley?
Let's do our game picks, you guys. I'm going to start with Swagoo on this one. Who you taking, Marcus?
I am going to take the Philadelphia Eagles because Saquon Barkley, to me, should be in the MVP conversation. And I do believe with the aggression of the Los Angeles Rams front, he will have an opportunity to be explosive in a couple times this game.
Man, I thought we were going to do like a secret reveal there, but as you can see, everybody picked the Eagles and I picked the Rams. And some of it's because I told Dan yesterday I was going to pick the Rams, so I'm a woman of my word. But he also convinced me with some of the stuff he showed about how Puka Nacua runs routes.
NFL bombshell. Daniel Jones on the Raiders' radar. American football fire. Attention, Raider Nation. An unexpected move shook the NFL. The New York Giants have released quarterback Daniel Jones, who just 18 months ago signed a $160 million contract. Now, the former face of the franchise is a free agent, and the Las Vegas Raiders could be his next destination. Jones' departure marks the end of a turbulent chapter with the Giants. After a season of ups and downs, Jones was relegated to fourth place on the quarterback chart, behind players like Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. Although the team offered him a pay cut to stay, the player chose to look for new opportunities. With a debt of $40 million on his original contract, it is unlikely that any team will claim him through waivers. However, as a free agent, Jones has the control to choose his next destination, and Las Vegas could be the best option to revive his career. The situation at the Raiders is not encouraging. After a season full of changes and rotations at quarterback between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, the team is desperately looking for stability. According to analysts such as ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Daniel Jones would fit in as an immediate starter under interim coach Antonio Pierce. For Jones, joining the Raiders would represent the perfect opportunity to prove himself and rebuild his reputation in an environment where he could shine without so much media pressure. ESPN's Adam Schefter says Daniel Jones will have multiple options, but the player prioritizes a playoff contender team. Although teams like the 49ers, with problems at quarterback, are also an option, the Raiders offer something unique, immediate playing time. However, there are questions about whether Jones would be willing to join a team with a 2-8 record. Still, his experience with 69 starts and 2 playoff appearances make him an attractive option for any team looking for depth at quarterback. In 10 games this season, Jones completed 63.3% of his passes for 2,070 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Although his time with the Giants was not the best, his talent and ability to lead still make him an interesting player on the market. Will Daniel Jones be the new leader the Raiders need? Pirate flag. The decision is on the way, and we will keep you up to date with all the details here. Let us know in the comments if you think Jones is the solution for Las Vegas, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exclusive Raiders news. Let's go for it, Raider Nation, ***Blackheart High Voltage.